Now I am going to start our lecture on models of information communication. A model is a systematic representation of an object or event in idealized and abstract form. Models are somewhat subjective by their nature. The act of abstracting eliminates certain details to focus on essential factors. However, the key to the usefulness of a model is the degree to which it conforms in point-by-point correspondence to the underlying determinants of communicative behaviors. However, the key to the usefulness of a model is the degree to which it conforms in point-by-point correspondence to the underlying determinants of communicative behavior. So, there are various models of information communication, and first one is Aristotle's model of communication. Aristotle, a great philosopher, initiated the earliest mass communication model called Aristotle's model of communication. He proposed model before 300 BC, who found the importance of audience role in communication chain, in his communication model. This model is more focused on public speaking than interpersonal communication. Elements of Aristotle's model. There are three communication elements, that is speaker, subject and audience. According to Aristotle, these three elements are essential for a meaningful communication, and that we can organize our study of communication process under the three headings. 1. The person who speaks. 2. The speech that he or she produce. And 3. The person who listens. Advantages of Aristotle model of communication. Emphasis on persuasion. Aristotle model places a strong emphasis on persuasive communication. Adaptability to context. Aristotle's model highlights the importance of analyzing the occasion, audience, and purpose of communication. Emotional appeal. The emphasis on pathos acknowledges the role of emotion in communication. The emphasis on pathos acknowledges the role of emotions in communication. Logical argument. The inclusion of logos encourages the use of logical reasoning and evidence-based argumentation. Timeless principle. While Aristotle's model was developed over 2 millennia ago, its core principle remains timeless. Audience-centered approach. The model encourages communicators to analyze and adapt to the audience characteristics and preferences. Disadvantages of Aristotle's model of communication. Limited interactivity. The model does not adequately address interactive communication such as two-way conversation, dialogue, or online interaction, which are common in today's communication landscape. Bias towards oratory. The model was developed in the context of persuasive oratory and rhetoric, which may limit its applicability to the model was developed in the context of persuasive oratory, which may limit its applicability to other forms of communication, such as interpersonal, organizational, and mediated communication. Overemphasis on persuasion. While persuasion is a central aspect of Aristotle's model, not all communication situation involves the intent to persuade. While persuasion is a central aspect of Aristotle's model, not all communication situation involve the intent to persuade. Lack of contemporary technological considerations. The model was conceived long before the advance of modern communication technologies. Limited role of feedback. The model does not explicitly incorporate feedback, which is crucial for understanding how messages are received and interpreted by the audience. The next model is Lasswell's model. Lasswell's model of communication, developed by political scientist Harold D. Lasswell in 1948. It is a simple and concise framework that outlines key elements and functions of communication. It is often represented as a series of questions highlighting different aspects of communication process. In an era when the study of mass media and political communication was gaining prominence, Lasswell sought to distill the complexities of communication into a concise and systematic model. Elements of Lasswell's model. Sender. Who? In Lasswell's model, the sender is the individual who formulates and disseminates the message. Next one is message says what. The message component of Lasswell's model refers to the message's content. The message component of Lasswell's model refers to the message's content. Another one is channel. In which channel? The channel component of Lasswell models pertains to the medium used to convey the message. Next one is receiver. To whom? The receiver component in Lasswell's model is the target audience, which has been analyzed to identify the most effective approach to reach and influence them. Last one is effect. With what effect? The effect component of Lasswell's model concerned the message impression on the recipient. Advantages of Lasswell's model of communication. Historical significance. Lasswell's model hold historical significance as one of the early formalization of communication theory. Clarity and simplicity. The model's straightforward structure and concise formulation make it easy to grasp, especially for beginners in the field of communication studies. Guided analysis. The model provides a clear framework for analyzing communication processes. Foundation for understanding. Lasswell's model serves as a foundational concept upon which more complex communication theories and models have been built. Focus on sender and message. The emphasis on the sender, the message content, and the intended audience encourage an awareness of the importance of crafting effective messages tailored to specific audiences. Disadvantages of Lasswell's model of communication. Linear and one-way. Lasswell's model represents communication as a linear or one-way process from sender to receiver. Limited feedback. The model lacks a dedicated element for feedback. Without feedback, the model overlooks an essential aspect of effective communication. Oversimplification of message. The model treats the message as a signal, isolated entity. It does not address the complexity of encoding and decoding messages, including the potential for misinterpretation, ambiguity, and the role of cultural and contextual factors. Neglect of noise. Lasswell's model does not explicitly account for noise, which can significantly affect the accuracy and effectiveness of communication. Technological advances. The model was developed before the digital age and does not encompasses the diverse range of communication technologies and platforms that have emerged since then. Inadequate for complex communication. The model is most suitable for simple and direct forms of communication. Inadequate for complex communication. The model is most suitable for simple and direct forms of communication, not for complex purpose. Next one is Shannon and Weaver model of communication. In 1948, Shannon was an American mathematician, electronic engineer, and Weaver was an American scientist. Both of them joined together to write an article in Bell System Technical Journal called A Mathematical Theory of Communication, and also called as Shannon-Weaver model of communication. Elements of Shannon and Weaver model of communication. The 6 elements of Shannon and Weaver model of communication are: information source refers to the sender of the communication process that conveys the message to the receiver. Next one is transmitter. The transmitter refers to the message converter that changes the messages into a signal to transfer through the communication channel. Next one is channel. Channel is the medium that conveys the message from sender to receivers. Receiver are the people who convert the signal into a meaningful message. They are responsible for decoding the message. Destination indicates both sender and receiver of the communication process who encodes and decodes the message. Last one is noise. Noise is the unwanted sound of the communication process that disrupts effective communication. Communicators found noise in every communication process, including verbal, non-verbal, written, visual, face-to-face, mediated, and group communication. Advantages of Shannon and Weaver's model. Explained IT-based communication. The model provides a clear and straightforward framework. The model provides a clear and straightforward framework for understanding the technology-based communication process, representing the key component noise. For the first time, this theory explained the communication noise that barrier effective message transmission. Diverse applicability. Shannon and Weaver's model can be used to explain diverse communication contexts, including interpersonal, social, mass, digital, and organizational communication. Technological relevance. This model was established in 1948. However, it is still relevant to analyze digital communication. Disadvantages of Shannon and Weaver communication model. Linear and one-way. Firstly, it is a linear communication model due to not demonstrating feedback. No feedback. Avoiding feedback is the major weakness of this model because every transactional communication holds feedback. Avoid feedback is the major weakness of this model because every transactional communication holds feedback. Focus on technological context. Shannon and Weaver model highlights technological communication context, overlooking social, psychological, and cultural context. Theodore Newcomb of the University of Michigan published an article in 1953 entitled entitled An Approach to the Study of Communicative Acts, which later became known as Newcomb's model. The model of communication adopts a different approach to the communication process. The model of communication adopts a different approach to the communication process. The main purpose of this theory is to introduce the role of communication in a social relationship. Message is not shown as a separate entity in this diagram, but is implied by use of directional arrows. He concentrates on the social purpose of communication, showing all communication as a means of sustaining relationship between people. Sometimes it is called as an ABX model of communication, as it works in a triangular format or ABX system. Sometimes it is called as an ABX model of communication, as it works in a triangular format or ABX system. Key components of Newcomb's model. Here are the key components of Newcomb's ABX model of communication that includes but are not limited to. Sender, point A. The sender is the initiator of the communication process, responsible for encoding and transmitting the message to the receiver. Next one is receiver, point B. The receiver is the intended recipient of the message, responsible for decoding and interpreting the message sent by the sender. Last one is message, point X. The message is the content, medium and form of communication being transmitted from the sender to the receiver. Advantages of Newcomb's model of communication. Comprehensive framework. Newcomb's ABX model provides a comprehensive framework that encompasses key components of communication, that is sender, receiver and message. Dynamic nature of communication. By illustrating the ongoing exchange of message between the sender and receiver, the model acknowledges that communication is a fluid process influenced by feedback, adjustments and evolving relationships. Visual representation. The triangular configuration of the ABX model offers a visual representation of communication dynamics. Next one is adaptability to different contexts. The model is adaptable to a wide range of communication contexts, including interpersonal, relationship, group communication, conflict resolution, and cross-cultural interaction. Guidance for effective communication. By highlighting the importance of the sender, receiver, and message component, the ABX model provides guidance for effective communication. Feedback loop integration. The model incorporates a feedback loop, recognizing that the receiver's interpretation and response to the message influence future communication interaction, and response to the message influence future communication interactions. Disadvantages of Newcomb's model of communication. Simplicity and generalization. First criticism of the ABX model is its simplicity, which may lead to the oversimplification of communication dynamics. Limited emphasis on context. The ABX model may not adequately account for the influence of context on communication dynamics. Static representation. The triangular configuration of the ABX model may present a static representation of communication dynamics. In reality, communication interactions are dynamics and fluid, involving continuous exchange of message between senders and receivers. Neglect of nonverbal communication. While a model focuses on the message component, it may not fully account for the impact of nonverbal cues such as body language, facial expression, and tone of voice on communication effectiveness. Limited predictive power. Limited predictive power. While the model provides a framework for understanding communication interaction, it may not accurately predict specific communication outcomes or behavior, particularly in complex or dynamic situations. While the model provides a framework for understanding communication interaction, it may not accurately predict specific communication outcomes or behaviors, particularly in complex or dynamic situations. Neglect of individual differences. The ABX model may overlook individual differences in communication styles, preferences, and psychological factors. Potential for interpretation. The simplicity of ABX model may lead to misinterpretation or oversimplification of communication interaction. The simplicity of the ABX model may lead to misinterpretation or oversimplification of communication interactions. Model is Wilbur, Schramm, and Osgood model of communication. In an effort to rectify the earlier linear model of communication, Wilbur, Schramm, and Charles Osgood developed a circular model to show how communication works between two or a few persons. It can happen within oneself, intrapersonal, or between two people, interpersonal. Each person acts as both sender and receiver. Wilbur Schramm stated that the communication process does not start and ends somewhere, but is endless. Key components of Osgood-Schramm model. The Osgood-Schramm model comprises several interconnected components that collectively shape, and the Osgood-Schramm model comprises several interconnected components that collectively shape the communication process. First one is sender. The sender, also known as the encoder, is the individual of entity initiating the communication process. Second one is message. The message is the content being communicated from the sender to receiver. It can take various forms, including verbal, spoken or written words, and non-verbal gestures, facial expression, tone of voice, cues. Third one is receiver. The receiver, also known as the decoder, is the intended recipient of the message. They decode the message, extracting meaning from the symbols and cues transmitted by the sender. Next one is feedback. Feedback is a crucial component of the communication process, representing the receiver's response to the sender's message. It provides valuable information to the sender about how their message was received and understood. Next one is context. Context refers to the environmental, situational, and cultural factors that influence the communication process. It includes elements such as physical setting, social norms, cultural values, historical background, and relational dynamics between communicators. Next one is channel. The channel is the medium through which the message is transmitted from the sender to receiver. It can be verbal, face-to-face conversation, telephone, radio, or non-verbal, body language, facial expression, etc. Last one is noise. Noise refers to any interference or distortion that disrupts the communication process, leading to misunderstanding or misinterpretation of the message. Advantages of Osgood-Schramm model of communication. Comprehensive framework. The model provides a comprehensive framework that incorporates multiple components of communication, including sender, message, receiver, feedback, context, channel, and noise. Emphasis on feedback. The Osgood-Schramm model emphasizes the importance of feedback in the communication process. Feedback allows communicators to assess the effectiveness of their message and make adjustments to improve communication outcomes. Recognition of context. The model acknowledges the significance of context in shaping communication interaction. Contextual factors such as cultural background, social norms, and environmental condition influences how messages are perceived and interpreted. Flexibility. This model is flexible and adaptable to various communication contexts and situations. Where applied to interpersonal communication, mass communication, or organizational communication, the model's framework remains relevant and applicable, allowing for wide range of analysis. Flexibility. This model is flexible and adaptable to various communication contexts and situations, whether applied to interpersonal communication, mass communication, or organizational communication. The model's framework remains relevant and applicable. Practical applications. The model has practical application in fields such as media studies, advertising, public relations, and organizational communication. Insight into communication dynamics. By examining the sender, message, receiver, feedback loop, the Osgood-Schramm model offers valuable insight into communication dynamics. Predictive power. The model's framework can be used to predict communication outcomes based on the interaction of its components. By understanding how changes in one component affects the overall communication process, communicators can anticipate potential challenges and opportunities in their interactions. Disadvantages of Osgood-Schramm model of communication. Oversimplification. Critics argue that the model oversimplifies the complexity of human communication by reducing it to a linear process of transmission and reception. Lack of dynamism. The model portrays communication as a static and one-way process with a clear sender, message, receiver, feedback loop. Limited focus on context. While the Osgood-Schramm model acknowledges the importance of context in communication, critics argue that it does not adequately address the role of context in shaping communication interaction. Lack of emphasis on power dynamics. Critics also highlight the model's limited treatment of power dynamics in communication, particularly in interpersonal and organizational context. Inadequate treatment of feedback. Some critics argue that model's treatment of feedback is limited, focusing primarily on the receiver's response to the sender's message. Lack of cultural sensitivity. The model's emphasis on sender, message, receiver interaction may overlook the cultural differences and diverse background of communication. Next model is David Berlo model of communication. Another famous communication model is Berlo's model. In this model, he strays on the relationship between the person sending the message and the receiver. According to this model, for the message to be properly encoded and decoded. The communication skill of both the source and receiver should be good. The communication will be at its best only if the 2 points are skilled. The communication will be at its best only if the 2 points are skilled. Berlo's SMCR source, message, channel, receiver model has 4 main components, and each component has its own subcomponent describing the assisting factor for each. Elements of Berlo's model. Berlo's model includes a number of factors under each of the element. A. Source. The source is where the message originates. Communication skill. Under the source, there are some sub-elements. These are communication skills. It is the individual skill to communicate, ability to read, write, speak, listen, etc. Next one is attitude. The attitude towards the audience, subject, and towards oneself. That is, for the student, the attitude is to learn more, and for teachers to help to teach. Knowledge. The knowledge about the subject one is going to communicate. That is, whether the teacher communicates in the class about the subject, having knowledge about what is being communicated. Next one is social system. The social system includes the various aspects of society such as values, beliefs, culture, religion, and general understanding of society. It is where the communication takes place. Next one is culture. Culture of a given society also comes under social system. Encoder. The sender of the message. Message originates. Next one is encoder. The encoder of the message is referred as, next one is encoder. The sender of the message is referred as encoder. So the source is encoding the message here. B. Message. It refers to the subject matter under transfer. Under the message, there are some sub-elements which are as follows, that is content. A message comprises of its content. Content is accompanied by some elements. It includes various things like language, gestures, body languages, etc. So these are all the elements of the particular message. Next one is treatment. It refers to the packing of the message, the way in which the message is conveyed or the way in which the message is passed on or delivered. Next one is structure. The structure of the message. Next one is structure. The structure of the message, how it is arranged or sequenced. Last one is code. The code of the message means how it is sent and in what form. It could be, that is language, body language, gesture, music, and even culture, through which the communication takes place or being reached. C. Channel. It refers to the 5 senses which are as follows: hearing, seeing, touching, smiling, tasting. Despite not mentioning a medium, we need to assume that as communication is taking place through any of the 5 senses or combination. D. Receiver. The receiver needs to have all the things like the source, and he is referred to as a decoder who receives the message and decodes it. Advantages of Berlo's SMCR model of communication. Clarity and simplicity. Its simplicity allows for a clear and concise representation of the core elements involved in communication. Foundational understanding. The model provides a foundational understanding of the essential components of communications, that is source, message, channel, and receiver. Teaching and learning. The model is commonly used in educational setting to teach communication theories and principles. It provides a basic framework that students can build upon as they delve deeper into various communication theories, strategies, and context. Analytical tools. Berlo's model offers a structured framework for analyzing communication interactions. Message design. The model highlights the importance of encoding and decoding messages. Channel selection. By including the concept of channels, the model encourages communicators to think critically about how they choose a transmit message. Disadvantages of Berlo's SMCR model of communication. Lack of feedback. One of the major criticisms of the model is its limited consideration of feedback. In real-life communication, feedback is crucial for assessing whether the message was understood as intended. Cultural and contextual factor. Cultural and contextual factor. The model does not explicitly account for the significant influence of cultural differences and contextual factor on communication. No consideration of noise. While noise is briefly mentioned as a factor in some explanation of the model, it is not fully integrated into the framework. Passive receiver's role. The model portrays the receiver as a passive recipient who simply decodes the message. Technical advances. The model was developed before the advancement of modern technologies like internet and social media. Westley and MacLean's model of communication. In 1957, Westley and MacLean's model of communication is proposed by Bruce Westley and M.S. MacLean. Being one of the creators of journalism studies, Westley served as a teacher at the University of Wisconsin-Madison between 1946 to 1968. MacLean was director of University of Journalism School, co-founder of the University College at University of Minnesota. X1, X2, X3, X4 and Xn are news item, articles or information. Feedback F, clients A, reader or audience B and gatekeepers C. Feedback loop between reader B and newspaper C, FBC. Feedback loop between newspaper C and client A, FCA, and feedback loop between reader B and client A, FBA. Advantages of this model. It believes the communication process does not start at the message sender. Rather, it starts with environmental factors that influence the sender. It acknowledges the role of subjectivity in message encoding and decoding. It acknowledges the role of social and cultural factors in influencing messages. It can account for both interpersonal and mass communication. It also acknowledges the role of feedback in communication. Disadvantages of this model. It places more emphasis on the message sender than message feedback. A more balanced representative of feedback loops is represented in the Osgood-Schramm model. The gatekeeper step may be a little outdated in a time of new media where anyone can create text that can be communicated via the internet messages. The gatekeeper step may be a little outdated in a time of new media where anyone can create text that can be communicated via internet. The model does not account for noise. The model also does not have much to say about the channel of communication. Next one is Gerbner's model of communication. George Gerbner, a professor at the Annenberg School of Communication, George Gerbner, a professor at the Annenberg School of Communication in the University of Pennsylvania, is a pioneer in the field of communication research. His works are descriptive and easy to understand. In 1956, Gerbner attempted the general purpose of communication model, stressing the dynamic nature of communication and also factors affecting reliability of communication. Helical Model of Communication, proposed by Frank Duns in 1967. Helix means an object with a three-dimensional shape like that of a smooth curve that goes upwards also comes downwards. It is a non-linear model of communication. Thank you all.